Okay, can everyone hear me? Even the people in the back? All right, thank you for coming to my talk. My name's Ed Burns, and I'm very happy to be here, my first time at JFocus. This presentation, this 15-minute presentation, is what Visual Studio Code can do for Java development. And the answer is way more than I can show in 15 minutes. So, in the spirit of Tobias Modig's talk, which was very excellent in this room, anyone attend Tobias's talk? Yes. I will go slow and not rush. And I will leave you the links to understand more. So the next thing I want to say is I am new to VS Code. After many years as a NetBeans user, working at Sun and then Oracle, so I am not a master of this. I'm having the beginner's mind. And it's been fun because I found quite a few bugs, and I'm actually going to share some tips and tricks for those of you who want to try Visual Studio Code, but are coming from a more heavyweight IDE perspective, or even going from Mac to Windows. This is a PC here, and I used to have a Mac. I also still have a Mac, but I actually like this one better, especially with WSL, and I'll talk about why that is. One quick plug, please do attend my dear friend Ken Sipe's talk about the 737 MAX. I believe it's kind of like a closing keynote talk, so find that on the schedule and do go to that. Here's my plan for your brief 15-minute time investment. Why Visual Studio Code? How does it fit in with the landscape of tools that are out there? Then I would like to talk a bit about how to get started. This is where the tips and tricks and pitfalls will come in, and how to avoid them. And in the remaining 10 minutes or so that I'll have, do some simple Java authoring, some more complex Java authoring, and then a summary and key takeaways. That's it. So how does it fit in? Is anyone using Visual Studio Code already? Okay, quite a lot of people. Is anyone using the Java extension for Visual Code? All right, so a few. All right, I'll be showing some new stuff then. For those of you that are not using Visual Studio Code, I'm going to show it from the complete beginner's view, because that's how I started a couple months ago, or a few months ago. So, and that's it, how to get started. This is what I call the recommended workflow for Java developers. So if you're on a Mac, you can just install it and get going. On a PC, you have to answer a couple questions. If you're a PC user and you want to keep living the Windows lifestyle, then you can just install it and get going. If you're a PC user and you're coming from the Mac lifestyle like I was, there's a few more steps to get the development environment that you're used to. And if you don't follow these steps, like I didn't initially, you'll end up with crazy things happening, like when you try to do a refactoring, it will open the same file up in a different tab and make the change there, because it's confused between WSL and the Windows side. So, you know, it's a bit of a precarious position, but it's all evolving. So, to avoid that, you install WSL 2. This is a preview version of Windows Subsystem for Linux, and I recommend that if you're going to start using WSL on Windows, don't even bother with WSL 1, because WSL 2 is a complete change in how it's working. The first one was kind of a lightweight hypervisor type thing, and now WSL 2 is a much more full-featured, full VM, and so when you connect to it in Visual Studio Code, it actually connects as a remote service, and that has a lot of power, not just for your local machine, but also when you're doing remote coding, which I'm not showing at all, but it's an awesome feature. It lets you debug straight into stuff that's already running in the cloud, which is great. Install WSL 2, install a Linux distribution from the Microsoft Store. That part's really easy. Literally, it's just an app you can install. And then you can install VS Code on the Windows side, and then you install this remote development pack, which I've done all of those steps right there. And finally, you install the Java extension pack. And once you do that, it's really easy to get started and keep learning more. So let's talk about Visual Studio Code from a simple authoring perspective. And the first thing I want to say is learning how to learn. This is removing your second-order ignorance. If anyone has attended any of my talks in the past, I love talking about the 5 orders of ignorance. And second-order ignorance is 1 OI, which is it's lack of knowledge. But you have a way to easily convert that lack of knowledge into knowledge. And Visual Studio Code is great at doing that, because it's great at telling you, here's some stuff you don't know, but here's how to quickly learn it, and therefore you've reduced it to 0 order ignorance. So I'll show how to get those panels up and running here. In this case, I'd like to point out that the help is actually helpful. Many times in products, unfortunately, from Microsoft products in the past, Office type things, I found that the help is not as helpful as I'd like. But in the case of Visual Studio Code, the help is really good. Design principle-wise, the tool itself is very much optimized for keyboard-only lovers. But it's not quite Emacs. I'm a hardcore Emacs user. Any old Emacs users out there? Yeah, the beard. Beautiful. It's not, it doesn't have registers, and it doesn't have evaluate expression, and you can't write regular expressions in Lisp, but you can write regular expressions, in another kind of dialogue. Well, those are some features I wish it had. But in any case, it does have in common with Emacs that you can keep your hands on the keyboard all the times, and there's keyboard shortcuts for all of the things. So when you fire it up, if you go to Help Welcome page, I'll show this. I just have it on my slides to cue myself. Find and run all commands. So let's just fire it up here. So I've installed it in the way that I told you before. I installed it on the Windows side. I am in the WSL side, and you just run it from the command line, type code, and it will come up here. And once it does, it will show the welcome page. Oh, sorry, I'm still showing my slides. What a faux pas. All right, escape. Oh, another thing I forgot to do is change the zoom level. Can the people in the back see it, or should I zoom it a bit? Zoom a bit, okay. Sorry about that, my time is so short. I meant to do this earlier, display. Hopefully I can get a credit. Let's do 250. There. That's a bit better. All right. So the welcome page has a nice little tab or section over on, oh, well, this is the Java overview. Welcome page has this learn section. And here, if you click on this, it shows you find and run all commands. Now, this little thing that popped up here is like the mini buffer in Emacs. So you can do Control-Shift-P to open this thing up. And all of the stuff you can access is available by typing commands up here. So this is the welcome page, and when I get to open Java, I'll show you that. But the next thing I want to show you is the interface overview. You click on this, and it brings up a little thing that shows you where stuff is. So I'll show you each of these things. File Explorer, Source Code Management, Debug, and Manage Extensions. So the File Explorer, which I've got open here, is just what's opened in the current project. Let me close the current folder, because I'm getting ahead of myself. All right, so right now there's nothing open. And then this is for searching across files in sorts of different ways. You'll also have, of course, find symbol, like you're used to. It's got Git integration built in, but it also has an extension called Git Lens, which gives you a lot more. There's tons of extensions, which I'll get to. Debugging, the Remote Explorer, which I'm not going to touch at all, except to show that it lets me interact with what I've got going on in my local Ubuntu. But if you also have connections set up with SSH, you can do remote debugging just like it's local, but nothing happens, everything happens there over on the cloud. So it's kind of like Ansible in that sense. It ships stuff over an SSH connection, executes it on the server side, and is able to show you a complete full developer experience on your client. Extensions here, this is the extension marketplace, showing the ones that I've got installed. And on the local side, I just have the stuff to get into the remote. On the remote, I have all of my extensions that I'm going to cover here. And then it gives you some tips and tricks. Another way to get help is the chat room. So if you go to the home page for the language support for Java, there should be a little button that shows up here when the page loads. Yeah, chat on Gitter. So one of the things I find coming new to a technology is having a way to get interactive help from the community is really great. So this is a very friendly chat room. You can hop on here. I hang out there. A lot of the core Visual Studio Code developers hang out there. And you can actually chat with us and say, hey, I can't get this working, and you'll get help. So I really like to point that out. Let's see. There it is. I've shown everything on this one. So let's go into the next page, which is getting a little into Java. All right, now one of the things that's a pitfall is if you're coming, oh, you know what I skipped? I guess I skipped this slide somehow. I didn't cover the slide. Okay, let me show it now. Visual Studio Code lives kind of closer to text editors than it does to IDEs. So this is the spectrum. So on the far left you have, on this side you have just plain old editors that don't have much in the way of smarts. And on this side you have proper full IDEs. So I am telling you, and Microsoft will tell you, we're not trying to go after the IntelliJ users. If you're a master IntelliJ user and you can fly through that thing, I'm proud of you, and you can stick with doing that. But a lot of people who are coming to Java for the first time are more junior developers, and we as old Java developers want to make sure that they have great tools that fit their lifestyle. And their lifestyle is often not all Java. So they want to have something that does lots of different languages, and VS Code is that. All right, so let me now jump into the coding. So it has full support for Maven archetypes. So if I do Control-Shift-P here and type Java overview, it will give me a link for create a Maven project. And we can actually just type, it goes to the Maven repo, the central Maven repo central. Of course, if you have your settings.xml set up, it'll go to any one you want, your corporate one, for example. So I'm going to pick this one, Maven Archetype Quick Start, which just gives you a simple Java project. And all this is going to do is run the Maven Archetype that I selected. And in this terminal area, it'll run it, and I'll get to answer the questions for group ID. I'll just say JFocus. And artifact ID, I don't know what that means. I'm just going to say no. JFocus. Oops. JFocus. And 1.0.0. And that's fine. And yes. Okay, now I'm going to suggest this as a bug. First of all, another thing I can mention, this entire thing is on GitHub. So all of the source code is developed in open source. You can file bugs, as I've been doing. So I'm going to file one for this, which is if you run Maven Archetype, it should open the project that you just built, but it doesn't. So I'm going to go to Open Folder, which brings me to the difference between folders and workspaces and projects, which is kind of confusing if you're not used to Visual Studio Code. If you're used to IntelliJ or NetBeans, you have this notion of a project. It's a project file, and everything you do is in there. In Visual Studio Code, they have a workspace, and a workspace can either be a directory in the file system or another thing called a multi-root workspace, which is just a pointer to a bunch of directories. Now, inside of those, you can have POM files and all your other kinds of regular things. But Visual Studio Code doesn't really have a notion of a project that it opens. It will write a bunch of dot files all over the place, it seems, but you know, it's not like a single project edit thing. So once you open it, you have the outline, and you can select a class here. So let's open Java dependencies, and here we're going to source main Java. We'll just open the package, and here's the app it generated. And we'll just set a simple breakpoint here. And you see it has a run and a debug link that pops up. So let's just click debug. And this will give me a chance to show the debugger windows. So you see the breakpoint is hit. You can get variables, breakpoints. There's also, they just added support in October for value-based breakpoints. So you can set a watch and specify when you want the breakpoint to break. Not a very rocket science feature, but you know, they have it now and just recently got it. So let's continue, and the program will end. What else do I want to show in the remaining 3 minutes? I have maybe less than that. 1 minute. All right. Well, I showed learn how to learn. Okay, this is a great way to finish up. And the slides I will, of course, upload. Get on the update train. So this Zhaokai He is my colleague. He is the program manager for Visual Studio Code Java, and he has a very excellent blog, and if you want to follow that, you can get all the updates that come in. Also, it has a Maven dependency viewer. So I had another example, but I won't have time for it. But it's just opening up the Spring Pet Clinic and showing the enormous amount of dependencies that any Spring project will have. And so that's about it for me. And I will say VS Code is worth mastering. It's not trying to be IntelliJ, but it probably does everything you need for Java. And it really fits with today's reality that developers need to switch languages constantly. So it comes built in with support for JavaScript and TypeScript, and Java is an extension. So that's the roots of VS Code. It started out as a JavaScript IDE, but it also has great support for Python, Ruby, Go. It's really the best Go developer environment I've ever encountered. So thank you for your time, and I believe I'm out of time, and enjoy the rest of your quickies here.